The captain abandoned ship before his passengers. Francesco Schettino left 4,229 people to die while he climbed into a lifeboat. And that was just the beginning. January 13, 2012. The Costa Concordia, a floating city weighing 114,500 tons, sailed too close to Giglio Island. Captain Schettino wanted to perform a salute. A close pass to shore to wave at locals. It was showboating. Pure ego. At 9:45 p.m., the ship's hull ripped open on underwater rocks. A 174-foot gash tore through the starboard side. Seawater flooded 5 compartments instantly. The ship began listing immediately. But Schettino told passengers nothing. For a full hour, he insisted it was just an electrical problem. People went back to dinner. Back to their cabins. Back to the casino. They had no idea the ship was dying beneath their feet. By 10:30 p.m., the Costa Concordia tilted 20 degrees. Hallways became slopes. Furniture slid across rooms. Passengers started panicking. And where was Captain Schettino? Not at his post. Not coordinating rescue. He was preparing to leave. What nobody knew yet would make international headlines. The Costa Concordia carried 3,206 passengers and 1,023 crew members. Families. Honeymooners. Children. Most were at dinner when the impact happened. They felt a shudder. Heard a scraping sound like metal tearing. Then the lights flickered. Francesco Schettino was 52 years old. He had commanded the Concordia since 2006. He was experienced. Respected. Paid over €100,000 annually. But on January 13, experience meant nothing. Schettino had deviated from the approved route. He sailed 500 feet closer to shore than regulations allowed. Why? To impress Antonello Tievoli, the ship's head waiter. Tievoli was from Giglio Island. Schettino wanted to perform a salute for him. A dangerous tradition where ships pass close to shore, sounding their horn. It was illegal. Against Costa Cruises policy. Against maritime law. But Schettino did it anyway. When the rocks tore through the hull, Schettino initially tried to continue toward the port of Civitavecchia. The ship lost power within minutes. Emergency generators kicked in. But the listing grew worse. By 10:40 p.m., the ship tilted 30 degrees. Evacuation became nearly impossible. Lifeboats on the port side hung too far from the deck. People couldn't reach them. Crew members had minimal emergency training. Many didn't know how to lower lifeboats. Passengers started jumping into the freezing water. The Mediterranean in January hovers around 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Hypothermia sets in within 30 minutes. Schettino finally ordered evacuation at 10:54 p.m. Over an hour after impact. But he added one crucial phrase to the announcement. He said it was a precautionary measure only. People still didn't understand the danger. They returned to cabins for jackets. For medications. For valuables. Minutes they didn't have. The ship continued rolling. What Schettino did next would shock the entire world. At 11:30 p.m., Captain Francesco Schettino climbed into lifeboat number 7. Over 300 passengers were still trapped on the tilting ship. Schettino later claimed he tripped and fell into the lifeboat. Nobody believed him. Survivors reported seeing him deliberately abandon his post. The maritime tradition is absolute. The captain leaves last. Always. Schettino broke the oldest rule of the sea. But what happened after he reached shore became legendary for all the wrong reasons. Coast Guard Commander Gregorio De Falco was coordinating rescue efforts from shore. At 12:04 a.m., De Falco noticed something disturbing. The captain was no longer on the ship. De Falco called Schettino's phone. The conversation was recorded. And it revealed everything. De Falco ordered Schettino to return to the ship immediately. Schettino refused. He said it was dark. He said the ship was listing too much. He said he was coordinating rescue from the lifeboat. De Falco wasn't having it. The commander's words became famous across Italy. Veda a bordo, Caso. Get back on board, for fuck's sake. Schettino still refused. He claimed he was doing everything possible. De Falco erupted. You need to get on that ship and report how many people are on board. You need to tell me if there are children, women, or people with special needs. You abandoned the ship. I'm in charge now." Schettino kept making excuses. He said he was in the lifeboat organizing rescue operations. He said he couldn't see clearly. He said other officers were on board handling things. Every word was a lie. DeFalco's response became iconic worldwide. "There are already dead bodies, Schettino. Get back on board and tell me what needs to be done. Now. Do you want to save your life or do your job?" Schettino never returned to the ship. While passengers drowned in flooded cabins, Schettino stayed on shore. But here's what nobody noticed at first. Here's the detail that makes this even worse. While passengers fought for their lives, Francesco Schettino went to a restaurant. Multiple witnesses confirmed seeing him in a cafe. Dry clothes. Drinking coffee. Calm. At 1:15 a.m., survivors were still being pulled from the water. Bodies were floating in the Mediterranean. And the captain was sitting in a warm restaurant. Coast Guard officers found him there. They arrested him on the spot. Charges included manslaughter, causing a maritime disaster, and abandoning ship. But the investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Schettino had a woman with him on the bridge. Dominika Samorton, a 25-year-old Moldovan dancer. She worked as a hostess on the ship. She was not authorized to be on the bridge during navigation. Schettino had invited her up. Multiple crew members testified about this. While Schettino was distracted with Samorton, he sailed too close to shore. Some investigators believe this distraction directly contributed to the disaster. Samorton later admitted they were having an affair. The final death toll reached 32 people. Maria Grazia Trecarici, 50 years old, trapped in her cabin. Diana Arlotti, 5 years old, found with her father William weeks later. Luisa Antonia Virzi, 78, drowned in the rising water. Each victim had a name. A family. A life cut short. Because one man wanted to showboat. Because one man got distracted. Because one man abandoned his duty. The Costa Concordia salvage operation took 3 years. It cost $1.5 billion. The largest maritime salvage in history. The ship was finally scrapped in 2017. Schettino's trial began in July 2013. He faced 30 years in prison. His defense was pathetic. He blamed the crew. He blamed the rocks not being on his charts. He blamed everything except himself. Prosecutors presented the recorded conversation with DeFalco. They presented survivor testimony. They presented evidence that Schettino delayed evacuation. That he lied to Coast Guard. That he abandoned 4,229 people. In February 2015, Francesco Schettino was convicted. 16 years in prison. The judge called his conduct inexcusable cowardice. But 16 years seemed like nothing compared to 32 lives. Compared to the children who drowned. Compared to the elderly trapped in flooding cabins. Compared to the terror of 4,200 people abandoned by the one man responsible for their safety. Francesco Schettino remains in prison today. He tried appealing multiple times. Every appeal was rejected. Maritime law changed after the Costa Concordia disaster. New regulations require captains to remain on board during emergencies. Crew training standards increased dramatically. Cruise ships now mandate regular evacuation drills. But here's what regulations can't fix. They can't legislate courage. They can't mandate integrity. They can't force someone to value 4,229 lives over their own skin. The Costa Concordia taught us something dark about human nature. When crisis hits, authority doesn't guarantee leadership. Experience doesn't guarantee competence. A uniform doesn't guarantee honor. 32 families learned this the hardest way possible. And Francesco Schettino? He became a global symbol. Not of maritime disaster. But of the ultimate betrayal of trust. Of choosing self-preservation over duty. Of cowardice in its purest form. The wreck site at Giglio Island has become a memorial. Divers still explore the underwater sections. The reef where Concordia struck is now marked on every chart. A permanent warning. Every maritime academy now teaches the Costa Concordia case. Future captains study exactly what Schettino did wrong. They listen to the DeFalco phone call. They learn one absolute truth. A captain who abandons ship loses everything that matters. Not just their career. Not just their freedom. Their soul. The name Francesco Schettino will echo through maritime history forever. Not as a captain. As a coward. And somewhere tonight, another cruise ship is sailing too close to shore. Another captain is making a dangerous choice. Will they remember Francesco Schettino? Or will we be telling their story next? Subscribe for a new dark truth every day.